To really get a handle on something as huge as biology, you can't just memorize a bunch of facts. You need a story. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to tell an origin story. And our main character, it's one of the most important molecules in your entire body, a protein. We're going to follow its journey, right from the simple stuff that makes it, all the way to the complex, working machine it becomes. A machine where its exact shape is the whole secret to its power. All right, let's jump in. And look, this isn't just some gimmick we're trying out. This whole narrative approach, it's just a way more powerful way to learn. It turns all these abstract ideas into one single connected story. By following just one molecule, we get to see how everything, from basic chemistry to complex genetics, it all just fits together. It's one big, coherent picture. So our story is going to unfold in 5 parts. First, we'll meet our little molecular protagonist. Then we'll explore the world it lives in. We'll assemble its building blocks, watch it actually take shape, and then finally, we'll understand why that shape is the key to absolutely everything it does. So who is this main character of ours? It's the hemoglobin molecule. Yeah, that's the protein in your red blood cells that's responsible for carrying oxygen. By following the story of how just one single hemoglobin molecule gets built, we're basically laying the groundwork to understand the chemistry of all life, and we're setting the stage to see how even one tiny mistake in this process, well, it can change everything. Every great story has to start by setting the scene, right? And for pretty much every single biological process, that scene is water. I mean it. A protein's final shape, and because of that, its job, is completely dictated by how it interacts with the water all around it. So that's exactly where our story has to begin. Let's start with a really simple question you can actually try yourself. How many drops of water can you fit on a penny? If you do it, you're going to be shocked. You can fit way more drops on there than you'd ever think possible. The water just beads up. It forms this little dome that seems to defy gravity. But why? Why does it do that? This simple little trick reveals something fundamental about the world, where life happens. Well, the answer is a property called cohesion. See, water molecules, they love to stick together. And that's because water is what we call a polar molecule. The oxygen end is a little bit negative, and the hydrogen ends are a little bit positive. These opposite charges attract each other, and they form these weak connections called hydrogen bonds. It's that collective stickiness from billions of these bonds that lets that dome of water build up on the penny. Pretty cool, right? And this stickiness is just one of water's superpowers. Its polarity means it can absorb a ton of heat, which helps keep temperatures stable inside living things. And it makes water an amazing solvent, dissolving all the materials our protein is going to be built from. It's literally the perfect liquid for life. Okay, so we've got our environment set. Now we need the raw materials. For proteins, that means amino acids. The best way to think of them is like a set of 20 different Lego bricks. Each one has its own unique shape and property, and they're all just waiting to be snapped together in a super specific order. Now, all 20 of these amino acids share the same basic structure. You've got a central carbon, an amino group, and a carboxyl group. But the part that makes each one different is this thing called the R group. Think of this side chain as giving each amino acid its own unique chemical personality. Some R groups are nonpolar. They don't have charged ends, so they get pushed away by water, kind of like oil and water. Others are polar or charged, and they love to interact with water. And these differences, these are the secret drivers of the whole folding process. So how do we actually link these Legos together? It's a process called dehydration synthesis. It's pretty straightforward. You line up 2 amino acids, you pluck out a water molecule from right where they meet, and boom, a strong bond, called a peptide bond, snaps into place. Now they're linked together in a chain. And this is a really fundamental concept in all of biology. To build bigger molecules, you take water out. That's dehydration synthesis. And to break them back down into their little building blocks, you do the exact opposite. You add water back in. That's called hydrolysis. It's this beautiful, simple, and totally reversible system. Okay, so we've linked a few amino acids together. But how does a long, floppy chain, sometimes hundreds of amino acids long, fold itself into a precise, 3-dimensional machine? This is where it gets really cool. To understand this, we're going to look at a simulation where people literally become the molecule. Okay, so picture a classroom. Each student is a single amino acid. They get a sticker that defines their chemical property, say yellow for nonpolar, white for polar. Now, based only on these simple rules of chemistry, they have to fold themselves into a stable protein. What happens next is just incredible. So, first things first, the students link hands, but in a very specific, predetermined order. This right here, this is the protein's primary structure. It's just the sequence of amino acids, and it's dictated by the genetic code. This sequence is the blueprint for everything that's about to happen. All right, next, the chain starts to form these little localized shapes. The students might start to arrange themselves into a coil, kind of like a spiral staircase. We call that an alpha helix. Or they might fold back on themselves like a paper fan. That's a beta-pleated sheet. These are the secondary structures, and they're caused by those hydrogen bonds forming in the protein's backbone. And now, it's time for the main event. Those R groups, the unique side chains, they start to interact. All the students with the yellow, non-polar stickers, they're repelled by the watery classroom around them, so they instinctively bunch up together in the middle to hide. Meanwhile, the polar and charged students arrange themselves on the outside, where they can interact with the water. This is the tertiary structure. It's the final overall 3D shape of that single chain. And the amazing part is, this complex shape just happens all on its own, just from following these simple rules of chemistry. Now, for some proteins, including our hero hemoglobin, there's actually one last step. Multiple already folded chains have to come together. The official name for one of these folded chains is a polypeptide. Hemoglobin is actually made of 4 of these individual polypeptide chains that all nestle together perfectly to form the final working machine. This is its quaternary structure. So wow, we've gone from the properties of water to individual amino acids to a long chain, and finally to this complex folded molecule. Why does all of this matter so much? Because in the world of proteins, shape defines destiny. The final form of a protein is absolutely 100% linked to its job in the cell. If you only take away one single thing from all of this, let it be this: structure dictates function. Hemoglobin can carry oxygen because its specific 3D shape creates these perfect little pockets for oxygen to bind to. If you change that shape, even a little bit, you destroy the function. It is that simple and it is that profound. So what's actually driving that folding? Well, as you can see here, the single biggest force is what we call the hydrophobic effect. It's that tendency for the nonpolar parts to hide from water. That is the main engine, and it's supported by this whole network of hydrogen bonds and other interactions that all work together to lock the protein into its one true functional shape. We've just walked through the story of how a protein is built perfectly, right? But what if it isn't perfect? What happens if you mess up just one of those hundreds of amino acids in the sequence? Well, a single mistake like that can have these cascading, life-altering consequences. And that, my friends, is a story for another time.